Okay, this is Chris Ott, and I'm back, and this is part 9 of this series called What Mayor Baba Really Taught. And we're going to talk now about the problem of the misunderstanding in Baba about communicating with Baba after he dies, channeling, um, or it has other names too. The communication with the dead, which is thought to be well, it's entered into the Baba community through other teachings, not from Baba's teaching. Namely, most recently, Theosophy. Okay, so the writings of the Theosophical Society in the late 1800s and the early 20th century essentially got kind of was thought to be true spiritual teachings by the early followers of Baba, and it never went away. And the hippies were very into reading Theosophy before they came to Baba in the 60s, so they brought all this over with them. And so today you have it's rampant. I mean, it's not rare. It's a lot of people know that Baba said not to channel and do this, thinking you're communicating with him after he dies, but they go on doing it, and no way to stop it. And so a common story is that somebody is thinking about a woman, say a man is pursuing her, and she's not very interested in him. But then she hears a voice, and the voice says, "Marry Richard." So then she later, gets married, has kids, and gets divorced, and she realizes he was an alcoholic. But she doesn't know what to do to tell people because she's already bragged to everybody that she heard Baba tell her to marry him. So remember the quotes I did that it said by Swedenborg that the spirits are wholly false, and they lie and they deceive. And so does it say that in Timothy in the New Testament, and so does it say that by Moses. It's deceptive. And the Muslims actually have a teaching about jinn, and that's where genies come from, that idea. But the jinn are mischief makers. So there are some kinds of things that are supposed to be without bodies that will communicate with you if you want. So, and then there are, of course, ghosts. And I was going to read what a ghost is, because a ghost is essentially what they're projecting onto Baba. A ghost is the soul or spirit, this is from Wikipedia, the soul or spirit of a dead person or animal that is believed to be able to appear to the living. In ghost lore, descriptions of ghosts vary widely, from an invisible presence to translucent or barely visible wispy shapes to realistic lifelike forms. And all these have been described of seeing Baba like this since he passed away in 69. And it goes on and on and on. And as a matter of fact, you get a lot of attention if you do a lot of this and you claim a lot of this. It's essentially what the whole Baba thing is. So, and then you ask favors, or he comes and does favors. So this Baba that died in 1969 and continues to haunt the living and follow around Baba lovers and give them advice, um, is it depicts a Baba that's incredibly trite and trivial. That he with wars and horrible big things going on in the world, he remains to like focus incessantly like a helicopter parent on like who you marry and what you're going to do about your dental work and things like that. But nobody thinks of that because they think of those things as very, very important. But from the point of view of Baba's teaching, those things are the part of the illusion, the phenomena. Okay, so um, now let me go on about ghosts. So the belief in the existence of an afterlife, as well as manifestations of spirits of the dead, is widespread, dating back to animism and ancestor worship in pre-literate cultures. Um, you know, I talked to a woman from South Korea, and she said that I was mentioned ancestor worship, and she says, "Oh, I know all about that. That's still practiced in Korea." And I said, oh, well, did they just like honor their ancestors or do they ask favors? She said, well, they say they honored them, but secretly they ask for favors. So this is very common. It goes way back. It's an old tradition. Now, far back do we go where God is into the trivial affairs of human beings? Well, we had the Greek gods were a little like that. They would get attracted to a woman in the world below Olympus, down the earth, or they would get interested in wars, and they would, follow along what happens to Odysseus and so forth, and send trials his way, and make bets on who's going to win, and things like that. So they were very interested in the world of the earthly life. And then in the Old Testament, you definitely have a God that is very, very wrapped up in the affairs of the world, and he even gets mad and he destroys the world. And, he sends two angels to Sodom, to the house of Lot, and they're to determine whether they should destroy everybody in the city. If there's a single good person, don't destroy it. So God has actually said this to the angels. So God's real into this. That's the God of the Old Testament. There's also a line in the Bible, God hardened the heart of Pharaoh. That's why the Pharaoh wouldn't let Moses go, because God kept hardening his heart. So God is always meddling. Like I said, like a helicopter parent. He's micromanages the world from wherever he is. That's not the God that Baba teaches. But that is where the Bible lovers are getting it. They're getting it from Theosophy, the Ascended Master notion. But the idea of God as somebody that you reach out to help you, that's from the Old Testament. And Bible lovers are, a large percentage of them are from Jewish families, and the rest are mostly from Christian families in the West. And both of them have this in their biblical tradition. So it would be natural to project that onto Baba's teaching, but it's not there. See, this God of the Old Testament that I was just describing, the one who hardened the heart of Pharaoh and killed the people of Sodom. Lot was the man on the edge of the town of Sodom. But anyway, he's been called a psychopath. Atheists like to put down this God as being really awful because he doesn't really solve the problems of mankind. He very often will solve for somebody, but for other people, he will just let them suffer. In fact, he created the whole world of suffering. But from ancient times, people have noticed this. And the Gnostics even believed that the God of the Old Testament was an evil character. And that's why they sided with the snake in the garden. He's the good guy trying to get them, give them the truth. Because God is so repulsive in those stories. But why they've projected this onto Baba, I don't know. They really had an opportunity to get out of the problem of evil and all that if they went with Baba's teaching. Another thing is Baba does not teach that God created the world. Baba said, who said God created the world? You created the world in your own imagination. And what he means is the sanskaras created the world. And there's a process that produces the world, and that God even finds himself in that process. It's not like God doing the process. It's like God is the protagonist of the process of creation. I'm going to get more into that later when I talk about how I told my daughter about Baba's teaching, because it really was effective. She has a very good understanding of it today, and I want to talk about why that is. But that's later. That's for another talk. In fact, that might be the next talk. But let me get into what Baba said happens to the avatar or perfect master after he dies. First of all, the avatar is a being on the earth, a person, the original soul, actually, and that made the original journey in the very beginning. And so he went through all the stages, all the states of God he passed through. And now, again and again, God passes through these states. But he was the first sort of individual that formed out of that process. And he, seeing that the all of creation was sort of caught in the plight of following its elder brother, the first soul. Every soul is now suffering an illusion, can't get out. So the Avatar stays and helps humanity, and all life in creation. He sort of he helps, and he helps by coming back every 700, 1400 years. But what happens when he's not on the earth? Okay, as the head of what he called as playing the role of God in a body like Christ. Okay, to understand this, we have to go to Baba's main book, God Speaks, and we go to a chapter, the 10 States of God. It's about in the middle of the book. And Baba had a chart made, and then he had Erich write up from the chart, flesh it out, describe it. Which he did a beautiful, beautiful job doing, Erich Jisawala. And Baba, of course, went over it, corrected it, and so forth. And it's definitely Baba's teaching. It's a very important, central part of Baba's teaching, the 10 States of God. In Christianity, you may recall there are 3 states, the Father, Son, Holy Ghost. And the Christians like to say, if you can't understand what a state is, water can be solid, liquid, or gas. But all 3 are H2O. They're all water. Doesn't change that. It's just that what state they're in. So that's just an analogy, not to read too much in, but it gives you the idea of the same thing can be in more than one state. Okay, now these for Baba states they're states of consciousness or ways of perceiving, and I'm not going to go through them all, but I'm going to go over the part where it describes what happens to Baba when he dies. There is state 1 is called God and the beyond state, and that's totally beyond our fathoming. And then even God, the next state 2, is still transcendent and so forth, but it's less so, and it's called the God in the beyond state. And while state 1 is the most original state of God, the beyond state is the original state of God. It's kind of funny how Baba gives a sort of a spectrum of how ancient, but there's ancient and then there's the most ancient, and but the state 2 is very important. It's called the beyond state of God, and state 2 has 3 substates. All 3 of these are state 2, beyond state of God. Okay, and the whole journey of the soul in creation, for which the whole reason the world came about is to make this journey, but that whole journey could be described as a journey from state 2 substate A to 2 substate B. And substate A is God in his original unconscious state, which Baba says you actually experience every time you go to sleep. When you're in deep sleep, that is the original state of God. You return to it. But then you wake up and all your impressions push out the world that's formed for you again, and you go on with your life. But anyway, that first state is God unconscious, and the journey for Baba is from unconscious divinity to conscious divinity, which is state 2, a B. Okay, so in state 2B, God is just like he is in A, except that he's conscious that he's there. He's fully conscious. But he's not conscious of the illusion. He's conscious of himself, because that's the only thing that really exists, remember. So God in state B is very perfect. Now, there's also C, remember. State C is the avatar of the body, or any perfect master. And he has to have a body, or he's not the avatar, by the way. A perfect master is not a perfect master if he doesn't have a physical body. That's what it means to be a perfect master, or the avatar. The avatar is the descent into the gross world of the avatar, of God. So if it's not descended into it, then it's not the avatar. Then it's state 2B, Okay, so when the avatar is finished with his destiny, he goes into state 2B. Okay, and as I just said, state 2B takes experience of self or reality and not the illusion. So when Baba dies, he goes into that state and then he has no awareness of the illusion or your problems, who you're going to marry, your thoughts, your anxieties, wars, all that. Those concerns are the prerogative of the living perfect master in his body. But once Baba dies, he goes to the state 2B. And Baba is very, 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 very clear on this, that in that state, there's no experience of the world. Okay? So, as the avatar in state C, this is from page 167 of God Speaks, second edition, 1973 edition. God is infinitely conscious of both reality and illusion. So that's the benefit of finding the avatar, because he can converse with you and he does know your problems, and you can tell him about your more trivial issues of your life. But then it says on page 184 that first of all, there's another state in the 10 states of God which is the same as 2B. Why he does that, I don't know, but it's state 8. And it says, but it still refers here to B, which is 2B. The Kutub, or Avatar, is the last paragraph on page 184, as I said, of the 1973 second edition of God Speaks. The Avatar and the Perfect Master retire to this state B of God in the beyond after disembodiment. And oh, here we go. Okay. God in this substate B consciously experiences his own infinite power, infinite knowledge, and infinite bliss, but he does not use them. He is conscious of his reality, but is unconscious of the illusion. So that is why Baba said that to Paul Brunton, that he doesn't hear you because he's not conscious of it. You have to have a physical body to experience the physical world. Well, unless you're a ghost. And then Baba does talk about ghosts, but I never understood ghosts, but Baba does talk about ghosts and even possession. But this is not what goes on with the Avatar. The Avatar is not a ghost. Baba says that ghosts tend to be people who committed suicide. Okay, so it's all there in the 10 states of God. Baba, when he dies, in the beginning, God was in state 2A, and then he goes through all the other states of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then there's the God realized states of, and then he goes. Then he is, if he's going to be a perfect master, he's into C, and then in the fourth, what he calls the fourth journey, where you make that final journey when he passes away, he goes to state 2B, and I just described it. There's no experience of the illusion, and the quote that they like to refer to argue that that Baba, for 100 years, he is in touch with the illusion, and he does haunt the world and does nano and helicopter, like all that stuff. He's a ghost. Yeah, and by the way, a ghost is what I mean, because a ghost, we all sort of assume from movies and books, is somebody who died, but they really weren't ready to move on, whatever the move on means. And so they were attached to something, either, like a pirate, he buried his gold and he can't get his gold now, and he hangs around. My father told me that as a child. I think he made it up. But anyway, as an example. So you have an attachment. So this sort of assumes that Baba's attached to something about the illusion. No, that's not Baba's teaching. Baba really wasn't attached. Baba said that having to be in the world of illusion was like a crucifixion for him. That it was awful. And that he longed to be able to get out of that. Now, why the Bible lovers want him to stay to like worry about their health and so forth? It's kind of selfish. It's very narcissistic, like a little child. Anyway, the quote is by Mani. It's from a book. She wrote this in a letter to somebody named Billy Eaton, and the book is called "A Love So Amazing," page 82, and it's quoting Baba's sister, and it said, "The 100 years after the manifestation of the Avatar is the period encompassing the direct living and personal radiation of the Avatar." Okay. So as I've said, it's sort of like a beautiful woman passes through a cocktail party, and after she passes, all the gentlemen still smell her perfume. But that doesn't mean she's haunting the place. It's like the radiation remains, the feeling. That even happens in the world, We kind of feel people after they leave the room. Okay, so I think I've covered that. We are at 21 minutes, which is good. We explained that the Old Testament God used to be like this, so that's where they get this idea, and they get it from Theosophy. The Theosophists were formed in 1875 in New York to study Spiritism, the hearing of ghosts. And then that became the center of their whole teaching, the Ascended Masters. It's not Baba's teaching. There are no Ascended Masters in Baba. A perfect master is not a perfect master unless he has a physical body. That's what a perfect master is. It's a human being in the gross world with who's God realized and experiences reality and illusion at the same time, and he can kind of merge them together. And that actually takes time for a perfect master to be able to do that, but then he eventually achieves it. When he first becomes God realized, he's often what's Baba calls a majzub, which is state 8, which is the same as 2B, but you're in a body if you're a majzub. But it doesn't matter that you're in the body. It's the same consciousness state, and that's what these states are. They're states of consciousness. Now, somebody once asked Baba, he said, it was Garrett Fort, the author of Frankenstein, the script. He was a script writer, and he met Baba in the 30s, and he said he was very into reading the occult and the Theosophists, and because he's kind of a macabre character, died quite young. But he asked Baba, is there really such a place as taught in the Buddhism of Shambhala, the resting place of the masters? And Baba says, well, it's presumed that you understand that planes are not places. And then he says, yes, and in Hinduism it's called Vijnan, and it's the same. It's the state. Okay, it says that in God Speaks, Vijnan is this state. So Shambhala is another name for this state, the resting place of the masters. But it got perverted into a kind of a place, and then eventually, because of the movie and book in the 30s, it's known as Shangri-La, which is not a Buddhist teaching. It's a sort of a corruption of the idea of Shambhala. All right, but I always found it funny because the way Baba worded that to Garrett Fort, that was the writer. He said, it is presumed that you understand that planes are not places. But, see, the thing is, Garrett Fort probably did think it was a place. Right? That's why he was asking. But Baba didn't want to make fun of him in front of others. But he was teaching this at the same time by saying that. So Baba says the same of like hell. Hell is not a place, it's a state. It's a state of consciousness, a state of your experience. It's subjective, right? So that's that. Now, when we talk about, so you might go, well, what about the personal God? I want to love God. Well, you still can. The perfect master is God. And so if you meet the perfect master, you are really face-to-face with God. Even though it might seem like a person, that is God. And he can perform miracles, he can help you, he can answer your questions, he can give you advice. And after he's gone, even after the Avatar's gone, there's still always five perfect masters on the earth. Um, and so that is the personal God. That's the only God there is in this world in Baba's teaching, in the sense that we imagine God. And often he has a beard, so he's kind of like an old man with a beard on a mountain or in a cave or in a hut, more likely. And just to stress how much the Avatar is not aware of the world after he drops his body, nor is any perfect master when he drops his physical form. You see, you need a physical body to see the world. It's like the lens through which you see the imagination of God. So, but to show how much he is disassociated when he drops his body, it is one of the reasons that Baba says that the Avatar has to be pulled down after 700 to 1400 years. He has to be pulled down into gross consciousness by the five perfect masters. Because he is in state 2B, which is essentially Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So he does not have even awareness that there is a world. And he doesn't have any sanskaras, and he doesn't have any sins, so there's no reason that he would take birth. And he's not watching the world, waiting to decide when to come into the world. The perfect masters decide that because they are in the world, and every generation, as they pass away, they leave their office, their spiritual office, to a charged person. So there's always five. And so after 700 to 1400 years, those five perfect masters that are on the earth, they make a decision. They look around at the state of the world, and they go, okay, it's now. Let's do it. And they pull him down because they have to pull him down because he doesn't know there's a world. That's Baba's teaching. So very, very, very different teaching, and it doesn't have the kind of creepy, evil Yahweh that has been criticized for thousands of years, and today is highly criticized by atheists as a kind of a psychopath. Well, maybe he is. He's only made up. Baba says it never existed at all. This is the truth. And I believe Baba. All right. And then in the next part, in part 10, I'm going to talk about how I told my daughter about Baba. I've told this story before, but I want to tell it again. I've had conversations with her since the first time I told it in a video. And a lot has happened in her life. And by the way, she helped me with the talk I just gave. She was the one who told me about, well, they probably get this idea from the Old Testament. And I realized, oh yeah, that's right. That guy's always, he's a helicopter parent, you know? He's very interested in the world. Well, that's not Baba's teaching. That's not Baba's teaching. All right, I'll see you in part 10. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.